UFC Paris was yesterday and it absolutely delivered. The main card was absolutely fire, but the prelims not so much. But without further ado, let's start with the first fight of the main card, Fares versus Matt Frovola. I was rooting for Matt to win. He's a nice guy and he recently became a dad and he's pretty funny sometimes. I wanted him to win. That did not happen. Going into the fight, Matt was at an obvious disadvantage due to Ziam's long frame and longer reach. Matt does have a decent chin, but he eats a bit too much punches for my liking. Going into the fight, Fares said that he's going to knock out Matt via a knee in the third round. And what happened? Fares did knock out Matt Frovola via a knee, not on the second round, but on the third round. And I'm more than happy to forget about him getting the round wrong because the knee was fucking awesome. It was one of those knees where you were live watching the fight and then Matt Frovola is knocked out of nowhere and you didn't even realize what happened. After Fares landed the knee, he followed Matt up to the ground and then landed two more shots. And to be honest with you, none of those shots were needed because Matt was out even before he hit the canvas. The moment the knee landed, Matt was completely out and on the ground, he was unconscious and he absorbed two shots from Fares while he was unconscious. And after the knockout, which was the first knockout in the entire event, the crowd absolutely erupted because it's their guy, the French guy, and yeah, France was on top. The knockout was pretty bad that I actually was worried about Matt's life. I mean, yeah, we've seen knockouts in every single fight night and pay-per-view, but this was one of those knockouts where Matt was out for a bit too much. Like while I was watching the event, the camera was panning to Fares and his corner and the crowd and then back to Fares and some other people, the France singing their chants and people screaming out loud. 2 minutes passed by and the camera pans back to Matt and he's still on the ground unconscious. There were like doctors around him saying that it's going to be okay, like it's all fine. Which is, by the way, a really scary thing to see a doctor say to a fighter who got knocked out. Like usually it's, how are you feeling? Are you ready to get up or do you want more time to sit down and lay? But this time it was Matt on the ground trying to come up with words, but the doctor's making sure that he's alive. That was a scary ass knockout. I hope Matt gets a speedy recovery since he's a dad now and unlike back in the day, fight's over, you go back to the camp or just mess around. This time you got a couple of kids to take care of. Hopefully he'll take his recovery time and be back in his best condition and hopefully he will not get knocked out the next time. And the second fight of the night, Morgan Charriere versus Gabriel Miranda. Morgan is the French guy and Gabriel is the Brazilian. Gabriel actually fought Benoit St Denis back in 2022. During the UFC fight at Paris. Benoit knocked him out in the second round. Going into this fight, I assume that Morgan is probably going to get a knockout victory, but Gabriel do have good ground game, and rather than being a grappler that takes you down and keeps you there, Miranda has the ability to finish you. I assume that he was going to give trouble to Morgan in that department, but over time, Morgan will eventually be successful. And he found that success in the second round. He knocked Gabriel Miranda clean out and the fans watching and the Paris crowd now have two knockouts back to back. The whole main card was awesome and it's important to note these knockouts are coming after a prelim card which had only two finishes and both of those finishes being submissions. The post-fight speech was pretty cool. Morgan went on the mic and said he felt hesitant going towards the fight but he heard the crowd singing the French national anthem and he felt like he had so much energy and power going into the fight. And what ended up happening was the entire crowd started singing the French national anthem. And now let's move on to the third fight. My boy Bryan Battle versus Kevin Jose, USA on top. The first round was entertaining and both of those fighters landed good shots back and forth. But in the second round, Kevin found out why you should never fist fight my boy Bryan Battle. I think many people overlooked Bryan Battle's walkout song due to his performance and the post-fight speech. But Bryan Battle walked out to I don't have enough melanin in my skin to say the word, so N-words in Paris. He walked out to N-words in Paris. So he walked out to N-words in Paris while getting booed, while not giving a single f***, and then went in there and knocked the French dude out in the second round and did an absolutely all-time legendary post-fight speech. I felt the freedom running through my veins, the power of the United States of America, the greatest imperialism in the modern day history, the nation in which people's right to fundamentally express themselves is a constitutional right. Popeyes, Hooters, Caesar's Pizza, the country that single-handedly just said, screw the metric system, we're going to use the imperial system. And I felt so patriotic. I am not even American. Yeah, I'm not from the USA, but Bryan Battle made me realize how it feels to be American. And shout out to the French crowd, which I'll get into later in this video, because them booing actually amplified that moment. If Bryan was just talking shit, and if the French crowd was silent, then it wouldn't have been that cool. And yeah, I always like Bryan because he's one of those cool guys who's not trying to be cool, he's just doing his thing and he's just cool. And I do not care who he fights next, I'll be watching. Fourth fight of the night, Joanderson Brito versus William Gomez. William is the French dude and Brito is the non-French dude. That explains a lot because William ended up winning the fight, in which a lot of people gave the fight to Brito. So I'm going to be a bit opinionated here. A lot of people are calling this a 30-27 clean sweep by Brito. I disagree. I believe that Gomez had the better first round. Sure, it was a lot of control time with little to no submission threats, but control time of that vast amount should account to something. And I believe Brito did not do enough on the feet on the later part of the round that outweighed Gomez's control time. The second round, however, I gave it to Brito. And the third round, I gave the slight edge to Brito. I saw him being the better man. He was the cleaner striker. He was also having the overall better performance compared to William Gomez. But this is one of those rounds where, sure, Brito won, but it was close enough for some of the judges to switch it to the other side. And that's exactly what happened. The fight ended up being a 29-28 for William Gomez, the French dude. Who would have thought the French Commission would give a close fight to the French dude? We have seen worse robberies, and that's kind of like the way of coping for me at least. And no, this is not an insane robbery. I have seen some people say that this might be one of the worst robberies in the whole year I have seen. Absolutely not true. Don't get me wrong, it has a good case to be a robbery, but it was not an insanely dominated performance by Brito the whole 3 rounds for it to be a huge robbery. Now let's go into the co-main. Nasruddin Imavov versus Brandon Allen. Let me deviate from the main topic for a second. When I started this channel, I made a promise to myself. I made a promise that I will never make this one of those shit-talking to fighters channels. I promised myself to give them their respect. Some of these fighters are people I want to interview in the future and talk to them, and I'm going to treat them as real people with real respect. That being said, Brandon Allen was like, he was pretty bad. I do not know what on earth he was doing. The first round, he won. Alright, he won. What did he do? Brandon took down Nasruddin Imavov and then laid on top of him. Like, that was the majority of the round. Before the start of the second, Herb Dean went to Brandon and spoke to him about how he has to do more, or else Herb is going to stand them up. Which makes sense because Brandon really didn't do anything. Not even shots from the mount position. Just on top, that's it. However, the second round onwards, he was one of the sloppiest fighters I have seen in the octagon. The only thing this man did was go for a single leg and then fail the single leg, face plant on the canvas, rotate and get on the back and then lift his legs up. That's all he did. He had multiple takedown attempts in the second and the third, but almost none of them were successful because it was bad. The attempts were bad. He was not setting them up with other shots. He was not closing the distance properly. Most of the time, when he was going for the single leg takedown, his hands were not even wrapped on Nasruddin Imavov's thighs. It was like on the calf. After he fails the takedown, he had no cardio for the second and the third. And over time, Nasruddin got better with his takedown defense, which he really didn't need a lot of because Brandon was sloppy, and on the feet, Nasruddin was the better man. And that was the same story for the third, and Brendan got a lot sloppier in the third. So did Nasruddin. Nasruddin also did not have an excellent performance, but Nasruddin was the better man in the fight. I mean, Brendan did not have to do a lot in order to win this fight. He did the good in the first. He just need to have good cardio and have a good setup when he's attempting a single leg. I don't know what's wrong with him, but something worse. And that might have been one of the, or if not, the worst Brandon Allen performance. Come on, Brandon, get your shit together. I like you because you always drop that cool hat that you wear all the time. And I like that hat, but I can't root you just because you have a nice hat, dude. You have to be good at fighting. And now, to the main event, Renato Moicano versus Benoit St Denis. 2 fights before, Benoit St Denis had 13 wins and 1 loss. Now, 2 fights after, he has 13 wins and 2 losses. There was so much hype around him that people were calling him the next title contender who's going to dethrone Islam Makhachev. And he was the Frenchman on the French soil, and he had all the energy and all the favoritisms going into the fight, and my boy Renato Moicano butchered him. Literally, butchering is the word. It's not fighting or beating him up. He was cutting him open, blooding his face for the entire first round. Renato, after the fight ended, showcased his shoulder injury. He was fighting with a dislocated bone. It was so bad, you did not even need an x-ray to see that his bone was dislocated. His bone was poking to the skin, and you could clearly see it was way out of his socket. And he did that to Benoit while having that injury. And that first round might have been one of the most brutal rounds in the UFC history. I mean, guys, the score itself should speak volume to it. It wasn't a 10-9 round. It wasn't a 10-8 round. Majority of the people started off with it being a 10-7 and then maybe it being a 10-8. And it was that insanely one-sided performance. On the second round, however, Benoit got the better hand. He was landing more cleaner strikes on the feet and outstriked Renato Moicano. It's important to note that the shoulder injury of Renato probably started showing its effect in this round, so his lack of input in this round makes a lot of sense. However, Renato beat up Benoit so bad, the referee Mark Goddard had to call in the fighter, and Benoit could not see from one eye and he could only see from the other, and even that one eye did not matter because his rest of the face was completely butchered and he had multiple cuts. He was cut on the eyelids, cut on the forehead, cut on the chin. I mean, multiple openings. And the more the fight went on, the more damage he is going to take. And if Moicano was to have like even one good dominant round like he did in the first round, the damage he would do to Benoit would be massive and it would be life-threatening. A good call from the ref. Renato TKO'd Benoit St Denis right after the round 2 and then gave another all-time classic post-fight speech. Let me see, what did he say? Okay, first of all he said, "Fuck Macron," the president of the country, and said, "Fuck the globalists," and then said, "Democracy is a fallacy." Deep stuff there, and then started talking about the politics and the economic situation of the modern Western society. And dude's doing this after a UFC fight. And I absolutely love this man. He's entertaining to watch while performing, and he's entertaining even after the fight. An absolutely hilarious and interesting personality. If UFC is doing the calculations properly, this is what they have to do. Either give Paddy Pimblett one more fight before the end of this year, or wait for a while and then do the Ultimate Fighter, Renato Moicano versus Paddy Pimblett. It's not just about the fighting, right? It's about what's going into the fight, the beef between each of the teams, the funny shit that they do. And if we get, as UFC fans, Renato Moicano versus Paddy Pimblett as the Ultimate Fighter next season, I can absolutely die happy. And yeah, that is the main card. I'll quickly touch up on the prelims now. Prelims was decent. I mean, there were a lot of decisions and only 2 finishes. Both of these finishes, as I mentioned previously, were submissions. Chris Duncan and Aline Perez submitted their opponents. And then Aline Perez twerked on her opponent, which I'm not going to talk a lot about in this video, but yeah, she twerked on her opponent after submitting her. And the rest of the card were decisions. I really enjoyed the Ian Cutelaba fight and I was looking forward to Umar Z. Umar Z is one of those prospects UFC is secretly building up to, gain some momentum around him. Easy matchups and slowly walking on the ladder rather than pushing him to the deep ends, and UFC is pretty protective of him. Slowly but surely, he'll grow. And that's all I have to say about the prelims. Let's score this event. Yeah, moving forward, I'm actually going to score every single fight night and pay-per-view. Here we go. The prelims, I want to give it a 7 out of 10, but I have to give it a 6 out of 10 because most of these decisions were enjoyable due to the French crowd screaming. If the French crowd was not screaming, it could have been a lot more boring. So I have to give it a 6 out of 10. The main card, however, was solid. I loved it from the beginning to the end. It was so good. It's a 9 out of 10. So if you're going for a median, it would be somewhere around 7 out of 10. But I'm going to give this whole event an 8 out of 10 because the French crowd absolutely delivered. They were so passionate throughout the entire event. They were chanting. I'm pretty sure at some point, they were chanting, telling the fighter to kill the other guy. I'm pretty sure that happened actually. They were booing at the right time and they were screaming at the right time. The folks at Paris, you guys absolutely nailed it. I thoroughly enjoyed the event and I think the French crowd delivered. And also the crowd, the live gate was good. The live gate was 4 million. And 4 million for a fight night is really good. So financially it makes sense, and the atmosphere wise, it also makes a lot of sense. UFC, please continue to have at least one event each year in France. These guys deserve it, and I would not be mad if you guys give France their own pay-per-view and their own fight night. that's a growing economy with so much potential and so much stardom, and make France an annual destination by the UFC. If you enjoyed this video, could you please consider liking this video? Because when you like the video, YouTube pushes this video to more people and it helps my channel out a lot. And if you want to see more of my videos, or if this is your second or third time watching my content, subscribe. I upload twice a week, every single week. Here's the video I did last week where I talked about why MMA media actually asks bad or incorrect questions and what can we do to fix it and what can we do to further improve it. It's a pretty opinionated video, but I felt like I have to address this boring staleness of MMA journalism. Go check that out and I'll see you in a couple of days with a brand new video.